Hi, in this video, I will show you how to run the diagnostic tool SQLLogScout on a SQL Server enabled by Azure Arc instance to capture diagnostic logs, review them, and also perform connectivity tests. A SQL Server enabled by Azure Arc resource represents an on-premise SQL Server instance connected to Azure through the Azure SQL Arc extension. This resource provides metadata about the instance and its databases, giving you a centralized view and management capabilities from Azure without moving your data. When you encounter any issues onboarding your SQL Server instance to Azure Arc, a tool like SQLLogScout makes troubleshooting easy by collecting comprehensive logs so you can resolve problems using Microsoft's official troubleshooting documentation. So this short URL, aka MS SQL LogScout, gets you to this page. From here, let's click on the download location. And when you click on the download link, it lets you download the signed zip file. I have already downloaded it here in this folder, and I've extracted it into the SQL LogScout folder. Now let's open an admin command prompt and let's switch to the folder where the PowerShell script is present. So let's switch over to that folder, clear screen, and let's launch PowerShell from here. So from here, we are ready to launch the SQL LogScout collector. So for that, there is a sample command that we will copy over from the doc page. Now let's talk about the parameters here for a bit. So the first parameter here is scenario. So if you click on the parameters list here, will take you to this page where all the possible values for scenario are listed. Now, the you can choose the right scenario based on the specific issue you're encountering. These scenarios apply for SQL Server instance in general, but for this specific video, we are talking about the Azure SQL extension. So for any kind of like setup issues with the Azure SQL extension, install, uninstall, deploy, upgrade, setup scenario can be used. For any kind of performance issues with the Azure SQL extension, general perf or light perf can be used based on how busy your server is. If you're using migration journey MI link, or if you're trying to see your availability group details on the Azure Arc portal and they're not visible, you can use the always on collector. And for this specific video, since we are talking about how to troubleshoot installation and installation issues or upgrade, we will go with the setup collector. So with that, the scenario that we will use here is going to be setup. And then the server name is your SQL Server name. So that's the server name / instance. I am using the default instance, so I'll go with the dot. So let's go ahead and press enter. This will launch the SQL LogScout. The first question it asks is if I would like to use the GUI mode. I'm going to say no. We'll go with the command line. And then by default, the logs that are collected by this tool will be stored in the folder where we are launching it from. If we want to store it in a different folder, we can provide it here. I will go with the default, so I'll do a no here as well. Now it is launching the tool and it is running all the collectors. This will take about 2 to 3 minutes. So let me go ahead and pause the video and we'll return when this completes. Okay, so now the SQL LogScout collector has completed. As you can see here, the last line here is thank you for using SQL LogScout. So we want to wait until this cleanup and exit routine is complete so we don't exit this tool prematurely. So wait until you see this last line. So all these logs that are collected are also listed here. So it is collecting SQL setup logs, SQL error logs, event logs. So the main logs for Azure Arc is the SQL Azure Arc logs, which has already been collected. So now that it has collected it, it will place it in the output folder in that same directory. So here it is, the same directory, there is that output folder. And in here, you can see the Azure Arc logs in the zip file, azcmagent logs. Other than that, you see all the other logs like error logs, event logs. So it's all collected in one place along with the Azure Arc logs. So within the Azure Arc logs, there are a couple of files that are of interest. For that, let me go ahead and show you our public troubleshooting documents. So here you'll see that within the SQL Server enabled by Azure Arc public docs, we have some troubleshoot docs specifically for deployment. And the logs that are of interest are listed over here. So there is the extension log itself, and that is called the unified agent log. And then there is the deployer logs. So basically all these, the SQLLogScout collector collects all these logs from the respective folders that are listed here. So it's much easier to use that tool. And then this document also goes over the common issues and how to correct those. So if we go back to the output folder here, we can see that the ACCM agent logs folder already has collected this information. So if we go to guest config, extension logs, the SQL Server agent, you can see that we have the unified agent log here. We also have the deployer log under the latest extension version folder, and you can see that the deployer log is there. Another log that is of interest is the guest config agent log. So if you go to the extension manager logs, you can see GC extension log. So this will also give you log entries corresponding to any installation and installation upgrade failures. So you can look into these three logs to see if there are any failures. And in order to correct, you can use some of these troubleshooting documentation. Most of the issues that we see are with respect to connectivity. And I'll talk a little bit about how to test connectivity. But this troubleshooting doc has some details on what endpoints need to be whitelisted. Some other issues that we have seen are related to prerequisites. So our prereqs doc lists all the prerequisites that are needed. So for example, we have some specific connected machine agent network requirements, connected machine agent prerequisites, and then some specific resource providers that need to be registered, and then some permissions. So all this is listed here, and you can go ahead and use this for checking out your prereqs. And then there is also like feature tables here. So if any of your features are not visible on the portal or they're grayed out, then you could refer to these tables here. So if, say for example, if you're trying to use best practice assessment, but your license type is license only, you'll not be able to see that feature light up on the portal. So you can use that table there. And again, by operating system, we have listed how the features are supported by version, by edition, and then also by service type. And then finally, I want to talk about the connectivity tests that you can do. So for that, we will be using the command azcmagent check. So if you look at like azcmagent, it runs a series of network connectivity tests to see if the agents can successfully communicate with the required Azure endpoints. So if you want to check for all the extensions on the box and whether the relevant endpoints can be reached, this is the command we could use. So let me go ahead and copy that and put it on our, let me clear the screen and copy this over. So as you can see, it's testing connectivity to endpoints that are needed to connect to Azure. And since we did extensions all, it's showing SQL extension as well as the core extensions. So as you can see here, it basically does just a connectivity, kind of like ping-like test. So it shows whether it's reachable or not. So if we want to see all truths for reachable, and then it also shows if there is any proxy in the mix. So we want to make sure that this is all reachable. So that's the first thing we do. And then if you go back to the troubleshooting doc that I was showing earlier for SQL Server Arc, in the troubleshooting connectivity article, there are some specific commands that are listed here that you can also run with invoke web request. So when you, and the region corresponds to the region where your SQL Server Azure Arc resource is. So when you do the invoke web request to the database, data processing service endpoint, you should see a 200 okay. And as long as it's coming back with that, you're able to communicate with that endpoint as well. So these are some connectivity tests you can do and make sure that you're able to communicate with the Azure endpoints and reach those endpoints. And if as long as they are working, your resource deployment and extension installation should succeed. So with that, just a quick recap. We saw how to download SQLLogScout, run it, look at the output. The output consolidates not only the Azure Arc logs, but also the SQL Server logs in all in one place. And then we also looked at how to use some of the documentation to self-resolve some of the issues. And also we spoke about the azcmagent check command to look at the connectivity and the invoke web request command as well. Thank you so much for your time and watching this video.